Hello, everyone. Thank you for another great week of discussion during week 5. I think this module is one of the most helpful in the course, and the distinction between change and transition and learning about the change curve, the transition curve is almost universally helpful. Your response, many of you, we all know that this happens. We have kind of an intuitive sense that this is the way things progress, that there is a progression as we try to deal with change, and there's the internal process of transition. But to actually have it written down and put in a chart is a helpful model. And that's exactly what it is. It's a helpful model. As several of you also pointed out, people don't walk through these phases in that exact order every single time. That every individual's experience of transition is going to be different. Just like the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, it's not that everybody walks through those stages in order and in a certain time frame. As a couple of you pointed out, even Kubler-Ross didn't believe that it was that mechanical. She believed that people could skip phases, people could repeat phases. Some people have completely different experience, and yet both of these models do give us a helpful way to think about. Kubler-Ross gives us a helpful way to think about grief, and the transition curve helps us to think about how we respond, how different individuals respond to change. That there are some patterns that often happen. And as you pointed out from your own, many of you pointed out from your own experience, change does first often induce shock. We're surprised, especially if it's a big change and it's sudden. We're surprised, there's shock, and the natural human response for most of us when we're shocked is to deny and say, no, this can't really be happening. There's a mistake somewhere. This must be wrong. And we gradually move toward awareness and then toward acceptance. And once we accept that this is the way that things are going to be, hopefully we can move toward the point of trying out some new things. If we're having a change in our policies and procedures, to try out the new things with new technology, try to figure out the new technology, figure out how it gets integrated into what we're doing, and hopefully be able to move forward. That's the ideal. And yet there are a lot of things that get in the way of that process happening that well. And as several of you pointed out, the big barrier in many organizations is poor communication, and sometimes really deliberate poor communication, where people in management or leadership will not share information with people in the organization. They feel that they have to keep information back from people, that they're not they can't trust people with information. But I think all of us would probably agree that there are ways to share information. For example, if a company is going through a merger, there probably are some things that leadership can't share, but they could share enough to reduce the level of anxiety and to help people move through transition in a better way than leaving people without any information and just raising the anxiety level. That's really one of the things that I think is one of the worst things that happens in this process is anxiety gets raised up because of lack of information. And once people get really anxious, performance goes down, communication gets even more difficult, the level of trust drops through the floor. And for a leader, what the leader really needs to do, as Edwin Friedman would point out, is to be a non-anxious presence, to be somebody that doesn't get caught up in the anxiety and is able to kind of lower the level of anxiety by not getting caught up in it and focusing on being a non-anxious presence and helping people to see that there are possibilities for for a better future. And what that really relies on is something that Bill George lifted up in his article on authentic leadership, and that is self-awareness. I think that self-awareness is key to managing change and transition, and self-awareness is crucial for leadership. As was pointed out in that article, the people who are looking at, well, what qualities does a leader need? They need self-awareness. They need to be able to look at their own history and experience and draw meaning out of it, and look at how they're doing in a particular situation and be aware of what's happening, so that they're not being reactive, but they can actually be proactive and make choices. Victor Frankl, who was a psychotherapist and a Holocaust survivor, he was a concentration camp survivor. He said, between stimulus and response is a space. In that space is our power to choose a response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. I mean, that's another way of saying that when we have self-awareness, we have choices. And when we have choices, we have some freedom. But without self-awareness, without being aware of this stimulus that's coming into our lives, and that we have the possibility to choose our reaction, at least to a certain extent, that's what gives us possibilities for freedom. If we are just blindly responding without any awareness, that takes away our choices and our freedom. And Frankl is somebody who I think has the authority to say that, since his context of developing his philosophy and his philosophy of therapy called logotherapy, or therapy that's based on people having meaning, searching for meaning in their lives. He has the clout to say that this is real, since he lived through one of the worst periods in human history and some of the worst possible circumstances that a person could be in, being a concentration camp survivor. So thanks again for all of your good work. I look forward to reading your authentic leadership essays, and if there is any way that I could be helpful to you as we finish up the course, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thanks.